Welcome on, bienvenue. Welcome once again to another live stream. You may recognize me from other podcasts, but here in the virtual studio, of course, is Michelle Carr, the guardian angel of construction. Her focus is on ensuring that you know what the best things you need to know before you need to know them about house flipping, about construction in general. But today's podcast is specifically aimed at a certain portion of the community. Those people who feel now is the right time to get involved in house flipping. That is to say, creating a guide on how to be successful at flipping houses. Why are we doing this today, Michelle?
A number of reasons. Firstly, I think there's a lot going on in the housing market. There's a lot going on in general for people in construction. It's a bit of a scary place to be. Obviously, daily we're finding out about big companies going bust, etc., and the housing market is volatile to say the least. So one of the things that people do, there's all these videos on TikTok and Facebook, and you can make all this money and it's really, really easy, and you can invest.
Which drives you nuts.
It does drive me nuts, and they forget about all the things that. All the finances that are included. Buy this, spend 20 grand on it, make 60 grand, and forget about everything that's included: stamp duty, like funding fees, and all these things. Make it so it's so easy, and it's not. But you can make money out of properties and flipping housing, and I just think we've been working on other bits and pieces, and I just think there's probably a market that not many people support, and I'm all about empowerment. And I've decided I'm going to empower these people and help them not get ripped off. But on the same instance, if the clients are understanding how to flip houses, it's also benefiting people that do the work, because if the clients understand what they're expected to do and how to do it properly, then these contractors won't get the blame for things that aren't their fault. But also there are contractors out there that are sharks. They're 100%, not all of them. But I want to make sure that the ones that are tarred with the correct brush. So the ones that are con artists, then how to pick those out and how to avoid them. And the ones that aren't, how to make sure your expectations are aligned and what to do and not to do. Because there's a lot of very, very common mistakes that happen all the time.
So this is a siren call. This is an announcement that the podcast series will be dropping imminently. We're just literally editing them at the moment. They are audio only, although there are going to be some short videos coming out. Now that is next year. I propose, and I think is going to be coming out a number of either short TikToks or Zooms, or not Zooms, wrong word. Goodness gracious. Getting ahead of yes, but a number of short videos. Let's call it just that. Short videos, really short and sharp, covering specific points where Michelle will be talking straight to camera, dealing with specific issues that you might have had. But the truth of the matter is, you won't have to wait for that, because the audio podcast, which I'd very much like it if you guys could jump on there, give them some love and give some feedback about, are going to be discussions between me and Michelle. Now, as most of you know, I'm a vaguely educated fool, and my whole remit is I'm interested and I want to be intrigued and shown the right way. I'm going to be asking questions, covering a number of topics, all to do with the kind of area that Michelle features in. Can you give me an idea of some of the topics we're going to be covering in those audio podcasts?
Yeah, of course. The first one is obviously an explanation of what's coming and some sort of top tips. Second one is about contracts. We then go into the Construction Act and why it's relevant. And the biggest thing with Construction Act, if you own a property that you're abiding in, you're exempt from it. But also how that protects you and how it protects them and how to deal with legislation, basically. We also talk about things to avoid, what to look out for, a little bit about due diligence, and also what to avoid in what makes money and what doesn't make money, and give you
it's not going to be full of bad news. It's going to be full of caveats, though, and useful things that you probably didn't think you needed to be aware of. And I've already had my eyes opened in the first few that we've done. What I would say is, it is the first series. The first series will be 6, and we're going to do each of our series as a group of 6. Now, the second series, we start getting serious in your ass.
Yes.
What's the second series going to be?
So the second series is going to be about due diligence. So it's an entire series. I was going to do one podcast on due diligence, but actually due diligence is the most important thing. And that's basically doing what you need to do and doing your research. So if you want to be protected, and that's all about getting professionals involved if you need them. If you don't get professionals involved, what professionals to get involved, what they do, terminology, that kind of thing. And if you don't want to get professionals involved, how to go about that and what you need to be aware of and what the risks are. But it goes into a lot more detail. So due diligence is a massive thing in construction, and especially in my profession, to make sure you've looked at everything beforehand and you've looked at costs, you've done your research, you are aware, and the deep dives that you need to go into. And if you don't want to do the deep dives, who you should employ to do that for you. So yeah, that would be a lot more technical, I suppose. It might also be, I'm probably going to do something, but I would probably do small videos that will be on my YouTube channel or other areas about terminology, because terminology is really, really important. And we do go through some of that, because some of the things that we talk about, you don't know necessarily what they mean, or you might not.
Not a clue. Not a clue. Amazing. I didn't realize there was so much terminology within the profession. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, even with my clients that are in construction, one of them that we often have this conversation about terminology, because terminology that they use and terminology that I use are totally different. So we constantly have a little bit of a joke about terminology, but understanding what that means to a contractor. And when you're saying one thing to a contractor and you think you're saying something else, understanding exactly what you're saying to a contractor and how they will interpret it.
Now, I'm going to give you a bit of a warning. Michelle is not going to pull any punches in this. She's going to call a spade a spade. Occasionally, she might even swear. The whole point about this is going to occasionally, Michelle. No. The point about it is, it's not going to be glamorizing. We're not here to say you can put in 100,000 and make 200,000 from doing very little effort. We're not proposing that this is a money for nothing. This is not your checks for free. This is very much all about, you've got to know which areas to put the hard work in. You've got to know which areas to open your eyes and be absolutely assured of before you get in knee deep and sinking fast into the quicksand. Two things. I want to ask you in a second a question which is probably going to surprise you. But before I do that, people, let me ask you, who will find these podcasts particularly helpful?
I think anyone that is interested in flipping houses, and by flipping houses is getting a house that needs work doing to it, carrying out the work and then selling it and making a profit. But also anyone that wants to do work on their own home, whether it'll be an extension or whatever it may be. Somebody wants to do minor development, anybody that doesn't have much experience in construction. But in all honesty, it would also help people that do have experience in construction that aren't extensive, but aren't qualified, should we say. So I've obviously got a degree in quantity surveying, and I've been in the construction industry for officially.
Hang on, that actually forms part of my next question. Who the hell are you, Michelle Carr, to give this kind of advice? Can you give me, without going into full detail, can you explain what gives you the right to give this kind of information out that is, let's face it, a lot of it hard won through bitter experience?
So I'm a quantity surveyor by trade. I'm also accredited to the CIARB, which means I've got a lot of dispute experience, and I'm an associate member of the CIARB, which is the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. I'm in the process of getting my company CIOB chartered as well. I've been officially involved in construction for 20 years, unofficially for 40. As a child, I grew up in surrounded by construction, as my dad had a main contractor, so I was there every day. I've worked on a lot of interesting projects, should we say, and a range of them. And most of my experience has been residential. And I'm pretty good at making money. So for other people, I can make money for myself. I'm better at spending it, but that's a whole other story. So yeah, I've made a lot of money. I know I've made a lot of mistakes. I know where the risks are. I get people out of trouble regularly. People come to me when they're in dispute or they're struggling with their business, and I've had a lot of projects that have had issues. I mean, I had one project, it was a very small project, and somebody kicked the wall and found out that the wall was actually brick thick, but rather than the bricks being like normal this way, they were that way. So it was like, I don't know, 3 inches thick. And that was a party wall. That was a fun experience. And
suddenly you find yourself in your next door neighbour's living space.
Yeah. But there's all these things that have happened that I've got a wealth of experience for, and ultimately I want to share that. But I also have a strong belief that we should leave things better than we find them. And I think that we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place. And for me, there are so many people in my industry that are con artists. There is a lot of con in construction. And I just think that my professionalism, my experience, my attitude, I think, to make the world a better place by helping people and empowering people. And my experience is construction, making money and commercially protecting people from risks, etc. And so they actually make money out of the houses that they're flipping, or if they're doing a building, not to pay through the nose and pay what's fair. And because that's where my skill set is, that's how I'm going to help the most people and empower the most people. And that's why I want to do this.
All right. So let me give you an idea of what this is not. This is not a guide to making a quart out of a pint pot. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is not any of those things. This is a buyer beware kind of scenario where we're going to draw your attention, or rather Michelle is, and I'm going to be probably amazed while she does it, to various aspects of things that if you knew them, you might not even take the project on in the first place. There may be a number of times during this where you're on a cusp of finding a large quantity of money. Some people say one of the biggest expenses of your life to go towards a project potentially. And after listening to it, you may want to seek pause while you reevaluate some of your life choices, because it may well waken you up to an idea to explore knowledge about parts of this that if you don't prepare yourself, you could end up screwing up. You know what they say, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And part of this series is very much to give you enough knowledge so you can then ask more questions.
I mean, I'll be raising risks and I'll be raising issues, but I'm very, very much solution based. So when I come, this is the problem, and I will give you a solution, or at least something to think about. But it's about being real and what the real risks are. And don't get me wrong, you can make money out of property. You can. So many people can, and it is possible to do. But you can't just go into it thinking that everything's going to be pretty. And there are things that you can do, and there's different amounts of money, but there's different amount of challenges. And ultimately, for me, it's doing things properly. So yeah, the first property you might make a little bit, but ultimately, as long as you've covered your costs and a little bit on top, then that's a success. And then you just learn from that, and you learn from that. So if it was me, then, and I was starting now, I mean, it's obviously difficult because I've got a lot of experience, but making sure I had the right professionals and professional advice, etc. And then maybe not making as much money as possible, but at least learning from those professionals. And for me, there is a monetary value, but there is also an experience and life value. And in fact, learning from a project and not making so much financial money, but making learning experiences and educating yourself is much more powerful, because that education, you could then work on 10 projects, 30 projects, 100 projects that could last you the next 30 years. So how to get the most out of each experience and basically not lose the shirt on your back, because it's very, very easy to lose money in construction and in property if you don't know what you're doing. And especially when you've got all these TikToks and Facebook videos, and bought this house for 100 grand, paid 20 grand in refurbishment, sold it for 250,000. There's a profit. Is it all easy? It's all easy. And you don't talk about stamp duty. You don't talk about professional fees. You don't talk about the funding fees or whatever mortgage, how to get that. You can't get a mortgage on a property if it doesn't have a valid kitchen, all these other things. There's just so much more involved in it. And also these guys either have a team that do it or they do it themselves, and the time that comes into things. And there's so much that it's just frustrating. And I think my husband has sent me a few of these videos, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. And it's true. However, you need to allow for blah, 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 blah. And I think I'm always pissing on his parade, but it's made me think that there's so many people out there like that. And I just think if I can help them to make money and not lose money, just the whole thought of people getting ripped off just doesn't sit right with me. And that's the point.
I think there appears to be a contingent of people who just want to hear good news stories and don't want to root it in reality. I'm afraid if that's what you're looking for from an audio,
you're wrong place.
Definitely wrong place.
Scroll by. That's not me.
This is going to be, I'm afraid, for some people, a cold water dip. You're going to be rooted very much into the reality of the situation. However, the positives that come from it are you will be forearmed, you will be prepared, and you will know which questions you need to be asking, and you'll understand the reasons why you need to ask them. And I think that's sometimes more important than knowing what the questions are. If you know the reasons behind it, it will make sense to you. And I think you'd agree, Michelle, for you, it will make the process not just lucrative, but fun, because you'll know why it works. And there's a lot more pleasure to be had from something you understand why it does what it does, rather than just pressing a button and off you go.
Also, there's another aspect to this. It's like often when people want to flip houses, they generally don't want to do it by themselves. Like a lot of people that I've spoken to most recently, they've just contacted me through LinkedIn or Facebook to ask me some advice. They're doing it as a partnership with their partner or husband or wife or whatever. And often when you're doing something like that and you're embarking on this journey, it is scary. And you'll often have one party that's really up for it and the other that isn't. So this will give you information and guide you into figuring things out. And to some extent, you can then use that information and say, right, I'm aware of this. We need to do this. We need to do that. And you will be able to use information that you learn from this podcast and the other things that I'm going to be doing in early next year to empower yourself and to also convince your other partner or whatever it may be, if you're not doing it on your own, that you've looked at certain things. And it also gives you some guidance on what to look out for and to make yourself protect yourself, but obviously protect your investment and that kind of thing. And to be fair, I just think I've always would recommend to people, even if I was doing it myself, that you have a contract between you. Like if you're a couple, I had a lady a couple of weeks ago that I was helping out, and we were on a team call, and I said, look, no disrespect, and I'm sure your relationship is strong. However, this is going to be a tough journey and there are going to be decisions to make and it can be difficult. And when money's on the line, you need to have a conversation, because what happens if you're putting your flat up or he's putting this up, you need to have a conversation and you need to have a contract between the two of you and an understanding. Because if you don't, when there's sleepless night or there's different conditions or you come up with a problem and you don't know what's going to happen, it puts pressure on your relationship. And if you've got that solution, you know, if it all goes wrong, that you're protected and your investment's protected or your time's been protected or you have this agreement. It's like setting up the basis of that just to make sure that every aspect of your project and moving forward is set up for success rather than failure.
So this is, as I said at the beginning, this is announcing the podcast series, Taking the Con Out of Construction with Michelle Carr. I will be giving the formal announcement next week of the first date, and I'd really appreciate it if you guys would give it a listen and hopefully benefit from it. Until next time, thank you so much, Michelle. We've got more useful stuff coming this year and next year, so watch out for that. Until next time, bye-bye all.
Bye.